In 2018, there was a tiny bag suddenly appeared everywhere. And all of a sudden, a new luxury brand appeared in our lives. Its logo carved into butter, beach clubs, lavish displays of French wealth, whimsy, oversized thimbles, boats, celebrity, perhaps one of the best attention-getting moments in history. Jacquemus. And the hype continued, sold out Nike collabs, bags, shoes. The brand seemed to be everywhere, but even in the most luxury of places, with people consuming fashion, no one you knew actually owned it. Maybe one piece, maybe. All of the conversation, all of the attention, for what? This is the art direction of French luxury, the creative direction of Jacquemus, and an excuse for me to talk in depth about traditional versus created luxury, soft power culturally in the world, how Jacquemus actually pulled luxury without having to have the time and history behind it using the power of art direction. We're going to break that down into 6 art direction and creative direction principles you can learn from, and end with a quick guide if you're ever in Paris. The marketing of luxury, the prestige and mastige price points are something I've spent my entire career working on. I have a super in-depth new luxury ebook I put together with Van Group, who've done things like the Road and Jacob & Co websites you can get for free down below. And it's apt timing to do this video, because I'm 24 hours from arriving in Cannes, myself to begin the summer lock-in from the south of France. I'm so excited to talk to you about this topic. It's both fun and educational and pertinent for how we consume in the modern times. Let's lock in. So I was in Paris the other week. As many of you know, I do workshops around the world. I have been speaking in London at the Vervant Pulse conference prior about creators, but I was in Paris specifically to work with a brand on content, and in particular, luxury content. That's always the question, right? How do you succeed on social media while keeping the allure of luxury? And I will take any excuse to spend time in Paris, a city that I love. And as I was there, I was having this conversation with people I was with and having these moments actually inside the city about this idea of traditional versus created luxury. So inside one of my favorite department stores there, Les Bon Marché, and I'm going to butcher pronunciation this whole time. I apologize for my Americanness. I was at the 1803 Buly counter. 1803 Buly is a very interesting brand. At first glance, they look like they have been around for centuries. But in reality, it's only been a few decades. The brand was actually founded in 2014 and acquired by LVMH in 2021, a pretty quick route to a luxury creation to massive luxury exit, but it is based on the heritage of something that existed far before, an old perfume house that faded into history. And they play into that hard. You would not know from looking at their ornate objects or the beautiful setup of the place that I was in to pick up a souvenir for my wife with their engraved combs and various scents and soaps. There are emails that go out extremely lengthily in French, detailing all the wherewithals and travels behind a new product. It feels like something that's been around for 100 years, and it borrows pretty lengthily from the history of those things, but it is most certainly not. Is new, borrowing from the concepts of traditional luxury to sell something traditional. You buy from 1803 Buly, you buy it as a tourist, you buy it as a souvenir or a gift to feel you are partaking in this old ancient piece of luxury that really is something new designed to sell you. So much so it's been embraced by the largest of the French luxury houses. And this concept, the idea of French luxury overall, plays into the soft power of the world. What do I mean by that? So the culture that a place creates, whether that's a state, a city, a country, impacts its power on the world stage. When I was young and first moved to New York, some of the biggest bands in the world were Justice, Ed Banger Records was incredibly popular, Daft Punk had crossed over with Kanye, and of their own volition into this powerhouse of culture. The Pagaille basketball courts were Nike's hottest activation, one of the most social media dominant experiential things of that time. Louis Vuitton had tapped Virgil Abloh shortly thereafter, kind of entering into a new era of what French luxury meant in the modern hypebeast movement and executing it impeccably. And with that, you would see the country of France, the idea of French luxury, the idea of French interpretation of culture in music, in fashion, had an outsized influence compared to the size of the country, compared to anything else that the country was doing in the world. The culture permeated. And interestingly enough, the majority of that has faded away because these things change. Hip-hop music was that for the US for a long time. Now when I travel, it's a lot of that, and it's a lot more of how many people learn about the world in America through YouTube and American YouTubers. We see Korea's rise in the global stage, with beauty, with fashion, with music, influencing the world in an outsized way, far more so than whatever that French impact had been in the previous era. All of these are part of shifting global landscapes that change how we consume, how brands are put together, and are fascinating to think about. Probably its own video. But for now, for France in particular, that's all faded. And what there is left is really the last 6 or 8 years, Jacquemus, It's the beginning of an apt metaphor of where the French luxury is now. Now, on one hand, someone you can easily admire, someone who built a luxury house out of thin air, we'll talk about in a moment. But on the other hand, a good metaphor for the complicated state of old luxury inside the world we adopt today. So why I always love to look at this example isn't just the fact it's so viral, everyone has appreciated it, you've seen it as a brand come across your feeds, that the brand started in 2009, and in about a decade, in 2018, began an extremely rapid ascent to being considered on par with the largest fashion brands in the world, with its shows generating as much attention. A global name associated with luxury with nothing that has probably ever moved that fast in our history. One of the only other examples you can talk about is 1803 Buly, which did that on a much smaller scale in a very different category. And they did that by executing an art direction and creative direction playbook impeccably. There's a formula for emulating luxury in the modern era. And I do always love to call out this. That wasn't overnight. It wasn't like it started in 2016 and then 2018 had the big moment. It was 10 years of working through this. Because I do think there's a lot of perception that if you want to start a premium brand now, a luxury brand, begin building that, you can do it in a handful of years. And even this that seemed like an overnight rise was a decade in. But the reality of real luxury is it's over the course of decades and decades in craft. And some of these things we'll touch on in a moment. But what you found is because of the visual world that we were in that 2018 to 2026 timeframe, aesthetics play an outsized role in the establishment of luxury. Same thing with the execution of social media. And they did a playbook that was as good as any brand has ever done. Let's start with the core, the two things that really defined this, that helped it associate itself with old luxury as a newer brand. The first is craft. So you will note when you go through the social media, you will see that the brand is showcasing the craft that goes into the product, whether you're seeing these ornate looms or craftsmen working on things. They are taking the time to show that it is a luxury creation. And when you look at the pillars of what makes someone want to spend a lot of money on a thing, quality is one of the non-negotiables. You need to have a thing that equals to at least somewhat near where the price point of what you're doing is, and at least be significantly better than what is significantly cheaper. Now you have the actual quality of the product itself, and we'll talk about Jacquemus's quality in a bit, but even the perception of quality, the showcasing of the process, the details that you care about the craft, you employ a certain level of designer, of art director, of the time it takes to design and build and sew and architect all these things. That storytelling establishes the prestige necessary and should be a pillar for any one of these brands' content. You've seen this in my video on Loewe when I talked about how they actually show the complete process and the patterns of their bags on their YouTube and in videos that are basically designed purely to just show you why they cost so much. It helps establish a brand as something worth its money. And Jacquemus did this in a beautiful, artful way. But it also took the iconography and the symbolism of craft into its visuals. That's the second pillar we're going to talk about here. It's not just showing the craft, but how to use iconography, and in this case, the iconography of craft. You may have seen the iconic video where Jacquemus is using scale and oversize, which we'll get to in a moment, in the whimsy of its art direction to attract attention by having people carrying the elements, the iconography of craft through a town. They were carrying the thimble, the thread, the scissors, these large items that are immediately associated in your mind with what it takes to create something, being carried around as symbols of the brand, as the campaign for the brand. They are using the repetition of iconography to associate themselves with craft and craftsmanship. And they're doing this very overt way. But overt works in the social media world. You want someone to remember something about your brand, make it big, make it viral. Continue that association over time. It becomes a creative direction tactic that a brand can have. And that combination of craft and the iconography of craft, and then how that places into content, which we'll get to in a moment, becomes the foundation for why a brand can be regarded at a higher price point. Why people can feel that it might be worth it to embrace it. And before we get into the content strategy there, I want to get tactical for a moment. If you have a business with traffic or sales that's based on legacy Google search, or you're building a brand or media business where you want to leverage SEO, I have some exact data for how this is changing, put together by my partners at Ahrefs. So first, Best X blog listicles are the single most prominent content format cited by AI chatbots. So if you're selling something where people might be searching for the category, whether it's a luxury bag or best made suit or whatever you sell, these Best X listicles make up 43.8% of all page types cited by ChatGPT. Make sure you are featured on these as a priority and you're creating these. Related, YouTube mentions have the highest correlation, 0.737, with AI brand visibility out of all the factors Ahrefs studied, both with ChatGPT and Gemini. And so what does that mean? People don't search just within chatbots. People search Google all the time. But Gemini now does the overview you see at the top of almost every search. And those overviews have reduced clicks to the first link by 58%. That's up 34.5% from just 10 months earlier. This trend is accelerating. You need to care about being summarized in the answer, not just having something that shows up on the page. And it's a new opportunity to skip that whole old system with all its entrenched money and time spent if you're a new brand. The internet is losing page traffic at an insane rate. If you want to be in the results, every brand needs a plan for their YouTube or being featured on others. So how do you do all this? How do you actually make a plan? Ahrefs has launched Agent A. It's a team member to work on new age SEO with you. It has unrestricted access to Ahrefs. You can chat with it and it will build workflows and take action. One of my personal SEO goals is to be more cited in search, leverage my YouTube platform, my newsletter, etc. So Agent A analyzed my presence with my multiple websites. It built a plan, actually found some spammy links to my Substack, and then built a disavow file itself that I could then upload into Google. And it made me a dashboard for ongoing visibility I can monitor in minutes. And if you listen to anything that I have to say here, I would have it be this. Think about your marketing team of the future as you have your team members, your human team, and then their agent team. So Agent A would serve as an SEO strategist or agency, and someone on your team spends an hour or two a week managing. You can learn more about Agent A in the description, and thank you so much to Ahrefs for sponsoring this video. Now to content. We talked about craft and the iconography and those big elements, but what Jacquemus really executed was a content strategy based around two core things that every brand should think about. It was based around place, setting, and what we call the vignette. So what do we mean by place and setting? You will notice when they began to launch collections or launch pop-ups in stores, they would do profiles, lookbooks, campaigns in certain places, whether they were going to Brazil, whether this was in the south of France. It was a new city and they began to document the luxury of that city. So when you are a brand creating content, the places you show, you become a parasite, for lack of a better term, taking what that place has to say about itself and say about the identity of the people that like it or enjoy it or consume around it or live there, and applying that to your own brand and what people think of it. So Jacquemus doing that same thing and saying, hey, we're in this luxury destination, we're opening a pop-up on Bond Street or in Selfridges or in Italy, begins to associate that luxury with the brand. They're able to use that place around it. And you'll see they will do these rollouts of content, 10, 12 posts around the place, bringing its DNA into the brand, associating it with luxury. And this ties really well to what we call the vignette. How do you, within a short vlog that keeps attention, that hooks with what it shows visually, tell the story of the brand and that luxury association? So you will see this whether it was a giant CGI bag training its way through France, whether it was people in these boat scenarios riding around or carrying the massive thimble. These are all vignettes. How in a brief glimpse, a single shot of a movie scene, can you tell a story that is eye-catching enough to hook? And proportion is a tool that Jacquemus uses extremely well inside of all of this. Set off a whole trend we've seen brands use to death. What is the 15-second stories your brands can tell that will immerse yourself in them? And I would encourage you, if you have a brand, you're thinking about this, whether it's your vision as an art director or a creative director, or it's your vision for the brand you work with, what are those places? Are you associated with the farms of Texas, Hollywood Boulevard, New York, places in Europe, in Africa, and Latin America? What are those scenes, moments that capture the identity of a brand? Your audience would be like, I love this. I want to participate in this. This speaks to me. List those locations out. That's part of the setting your world exists in. And when you begin to think of art direction or creative direction at a higher level, your job is to be able to articulate that world, both from how you would describe it to be able to get a campaign produced, but then also to be able to actually go to those places, know where they are, find and coordinate with the models. That's how you get advanced in this, is you both have the ideas, you have the ability to present the ideas, and the networks to execute them. And if you build your career and your thoughts around how you begin to execute that, you begin to think a lot more like a true creative director. And I would do that homework for you or whatever brand you work on. What are those places that make sense for your brand or for you personally that would embody those things that you care about? And then what would be those vignettes? What are stories that you could tell underneath them? In the second collection I released for my little experimental valuables brand, we thought about this a lot. We had one of our models in the car. We've been shooting with a lot of vintage cars. We would basically have the vignette of our customer, who's someone who would appreciate or go out of their way to live and have to take the time and energy that goes into maintaining an older vehicle. And then we had shot him with an oversized dog inside a gas station, living this kind of life that appeals to our very specific customer. Same thing with the brand Understated Leather I've worked on marketing for a long time. Some of our best performing ads were from a lookbook the founder Jen had concepted called In Her Element, where we had kind of like the modern cowgirl, for lack of a better term, riding her Clydesdale in the country of Texas, and then in the bars, the apartment, the places that she would occupy. It's a fun exercise to think through, to begin putting those practices of place and vignette into your toolkit. And then to get tactical, you need to think in terms of hooks. So the two that are the elements of French luxury that Jacquemus has pulled are proportion and whimsy. So we see proportion as one of the easiest things ever. You make something really big, you make something really small, it immediately catches people's eyes on feed. Is that played out now? Yes. Does it still work? Also yes. One of the easiest solutions you have to just make something big, to know that it can work on social media. And being early to one of these tactics or trends that can work on feed goes a long way. People can associate this trend, know that Jacquemus was part of pushing that forward when it first did it. But then also being able to ride it the way Rode is kind of in the follow-up of this, still uses it to this day, and it works. You don't always have to be first if your customer isn't necessarily first. But whimsy is another. Whimsy is at the heart of everything related to French luxury. And I think an understated element here, where everything just has that fun. Yes, of course it's in butter. Yes, of course there's a little illustration. There's fun, it's cheeky, it's odd. That's the underrated X factor in a world where everything's so serious and luxury is so buttoned up. There's something distinctly French about the fun little illustration, or the brief moment, or the saying something snarky at the exact right time that ties all of these campaigns and moments together. But when you talk about, is this whole world that we see here, is it a true luxury world? Is this a luxury brand? And one of the biggest conversations you'll find is that's missing the product. To achieve this true modern luxury where you can justify top dollar, you're popular, and people believe it's worth it, you have to have all of these things: the craft, the history, the content, the execution, and also the product. And that's where Jacquemus has fallen short. Most people who've bought have bought maybe one thing, and if they did, most of them probably didn't have a great experience with it. Maybe one suit, maybe a dress, maybe a bag, and it's all right. There isn't that signature, that amazingness. There may be, oh, I bought this one hype sneaker, I did whatever that worked on, I had this one tangential experience with the brand, but there isn't that core product that keeps everyone going back the way you know you need your Europeana sweater, your Bottega bag, the things that people purchase and are proud of and pass around like an artifact. And you can have all the other things and not have that, and it's just not quite right. But this is all a game of time. With all of this foundation, if that thing comes in a decade or another decade, all of the rest of the setting is there, and you'll watch everything click into place. And if you're interested more in these principles and these tactics, we talk a lot about this on websites and in Art Direction inside that Modern Luxury ebook that you can grab down below if you want to get some reading in on this. That's free as well. And if you are ever in Paris and want to explore some of this or just be inspired by some of the creative direction or moments around there, a few recommendations. So first, you'll see a lot of content on TikTok that says go to like Sabra or Merci. Those are, in my mind, just kind of traps. Products being created to sell you an idea of something Parisian. I would highly recommend the Grande Épicerie, which is a upscale supermarket full of, from whether it's brands to wine to truffles to drinks to chocolate, just an incredible experience. Les Bon Marche, which is across the street, which is a department store, kind of has alternating seasonal displays. Ex Libris is inside there that will make you a crest for your family or brand. So a more fun keepsake than some of the other options you may see. Rue Saint-Honor, and again, I'm destroying these pronunciations I already know, is a street all of perfumeries. And if you are into fragrance, it's the excellent place to go experiment. Your nose may never recover. Bourse de Commerce is a gorgeous museum and gallery that I highly, highly recommend. La Samaritaine, another department store, I believe one of the oldest ones in Paris, that has, again, just their own branding for their own establishment. The seasonal campaigns that alternate the way these brands present. You can go see Jacquemus's display in there and kind of see this kind of weird half world that it operates in. If you're into cookware at all, D. Oren. Can't wait for the pronunciation corrections down below.
His name? What's his name? I got nothing on a name. Come on, baby, what's the name?
Is a kind of from the source cookware for copper and pots and knives and actual cooking equipment and accoutrements if you are into that the way I am. But I am here for the next weeks in France. I'm in the south of France hosting at our house for Cannes. We are going to Monaco. I'm doing a workshop with some personal brands there. I will be inside the luxury industry for a good chunk of the summer. So we have more content coming about some of these topics which I love to explore and talk about. Thank y'all so much for watching.